I'm Alexa, 28 years old, and I'm sitting in my car outside the Grand Pavilion where my sister Emma is getting married right now. My hands are shaking as I grip the steering wheel because my own parents banned me from attending. Just as I'm about to drive away, someone knocks frantically on my window. It's Jake, Emma's fiancé, still in his wedding tux. "Your parents don't know the truth about why Emma really wanted you here," he says breathlessly. "She's pregnant and she needs you." Before I continue this story, where are you watching from today? Please hit that like button and subscribe if you want to hear how this family drama unfolds. Trust me, what happens next will leave you speechless. Growing up in the Harrison household meant living in two different worlds. Emma lived in one where the sun always shined and every achievement was celebrated. I lived in the shadow world where nothing I did was ever good enough. My parents, Harold and Grace Harrison, had perfected the art of favoritism over 20 years, and everyone in our affluent Connecticut neighborhood knew Emma was their golden child, while I was the family disappointment. The irony was that by any objective measure, I had exceeded every expectation. I graduated summa cum laude from Yale with a dual degree in business and marketing. By 25, I had built my own digital marketing firm from scratch, landing Fortune 500 clients and employing 15 people. But when I excitedly told my parents about closing a $1 million contract, my mother's response was to ask if I'd seen Emma's new haircut. When Emma graduated from community college with a C average and got a part-time job at a boutique clothing store, my parents threw a party for 50 people. The defining moment that cemented our roles happened when I was 16 and Emma was 14. I came home early from debate practice and caught Emma in my room, stuffing money from my savings envelope into her purse. I'd been saving for months to buy a laptop for school. When I confronted her, she started crying and ran to our parents, claiming I had accused her of stealing when she was just borrowing a pen. Without even asking for my side of the story, my father grounded me for 2 months for bullying my sister. The money disappeared, Emma got a new designer handbag that week, and the pattern was set in stone. For years, I tried everything to win my parents' approval. Perfect grades weren't enough. Starting my own business wasn't enough. Donating to charity, volunteering at the hospital, buying them expensive Christmas gifts, nothing moved the needle. Emma could skip family dinners, forget birthdays, even wreck my father's BMW when she drove drunk at 19, and somehow it was always explained away or blamed on me. If you hadn't refused to pick her up from that party, my mother had said about the drunk driving incident, conveniently forgetting that I was in Boston for a business conference Emma knew about for months. The situation escalated dramatically when I started dating Derek 2 years ago. Derek was everything my parents claimed to value: successful, kind, charitable, and from a good family. He was a cardiologist at Mount Sinai, served on multiple nonprofit boards, and treated me like gold. There was just one thing my parents couldn't get past, though they'd never admit it outright. Derek was black. Suddenly, my parents developed concerns about my relationship. They worried about cultural differences and whether we were truly compatible. They made comments about thinking of the children and how complicated their lives would be. Their racism was wrapped in so many layers of fake concern that calling it out directly resulted in them playing the victim. "How dare you call us racist?" my mother would cry. "We're just worried about your future." Emma knew how wrong it was. I could see it in her eyes during family dinners when our parents would make their subtle digs about Derek. Sometimes she'd squeeze my hand under the table or give me sympathetic looks. But she never spoke up. Not once. Her silence felt like betrayal, but I told myself she was young, still living at home, still dependent on them. I made excuses for her the way I'd learned to make excuses for everyone in my family except myself. Standing in that parking lot with Jake, I learned that Emma's guilt had been eating her alive. "She cries about it all the time," Jake told me, his eyes full of concern. "Especially since she found out about the pregnancy. She keeps saying she's been a coward, that she should have defended you years ago. The stress is making her sick, Alexa. The doctor is worried about her blood pressure." Part of me wanted to scoff. Emma's guilt was 20 years too late. But another part, The part that still remembered braiding my little sister's hair and reading her bedtime stories, felt a crack in the armor I'd built around my heart. Jake must have seen it in my face, because he pressed on. There's more you need to know about why your parents banned you from this wedding. Emma discovered something, and it's been killing her to keep it secret. The formal banning started 3 months ago when I made the mistake of sharing my joy with my family. Derek had proposed during a sunset picnic in Central Park, and despite everything, my first instinct was still to call my parents. I should have known better. The moment I mentioned Derek's name, the temperature through the phone dropped to Arctic levels. "You can't be serious," my mother had said, her voice dripping with disdain. "You're really going to go through with this?" When I confirmed that yes, I was engaged to the man I loved, my father took the phone. His voice was calm, controlled, the way it always got when he was about to devastate me. "If you proceed with this engagement, you'll no longer be welcome in our home. We won't support this union, financially or otherwise." The financial threat was almost laughable. I hadn't taken a penny from them since college, and even then, I later learned they'd given Emma twice what they'd given me while telling me I should be grateful for their generous support. But the ban from their home stung more than I wanted to admit. Despite everything, some small part of me still hoped things could change. The real knife to the heart came 2 weeks later when Emma called to tell me about her engagement to Jake. She was crying, begging me to be happy for her even though she knew the timing was awful. I was happy for her. Jake was a good man, a pediatrician who adored her. I promised to help with wedding planning, to be the best maid of honor she could ask for. That promise lasted exactly 1 week before my parents intervened. My mother called with her verdict. "We can't have you ruining Emma's special day with your drama. It would be best if you didn't attend." "My drama?" I had repeated, incredulous. "You mean my engagement?" "You know what I mean," she replied curtly. "Emma deserves a perfect day without any distractions. If you love your sister, you'll understand." The manipulation was masterful. Frame my very presence as harmful to Emma, make my love for my sister the weapon to keep me away. When I tried to call Emma, she texted back that she was too upset to talk and needed time to process. I later learned my parents had taken her phone and sent that message. The official ban came via certified letter, as if I were some kind of legal threat they needed documentation against. The language was formal, cold, and clearly written with legal help. I was formally uninvited from the wedding due to my lifestyle choices that were incompatible with the family's values. They even included a threat about security if I attempted to attend. Extended family members were told I was too busy with work to attend. My cousin Meredith, God bless her, didn't buy it and reached out privately. "What kind of work emergency lasts through a sister's wedding?" she had texted. When I told her the truth, she was horrified but not entirely surprised. "I always wondered why they treated you two so differently," she admitted. It never made sense. Jake's revelations in the parking lot painted an even darker picture. Emma had discovered she was pregnant 2 weeks ago, right in the middle of wedding planning. The joy of impending motherhood was overshadowed by crushing guilt about my absence. "She keeps saying she's failing her baby already," Jake explained. "That she's teaching her child that family abandons family when things get tough." The pregnancy had been complicated by Emma's skyrocketing stress levels. Her blood pressure was concerning enough that her doctor had put her on modified bed rest just a week before the wedding. Jake had begged her to call me, to fix things with or without our parents' approval, but Emma was paralyzed by 28 years of conditioning. She couldn't defy them, not even for this. "She made me promise to find you today," Jake continued, his voice urgent. "She wrote you a letter explaining everything, including what she found out about your parents. But when she tried to give it to you this morning, your parents intercepted it. They told her if she contacted you, they'd withdraw all financial support for the wedding and the baby." The cruelty of it took my breath away. Using Emma's wedding and unborn child as weapons to maintain their control. Jake saw my expression and nodded grimly. "That's not even the worst part. Emma found documents, Alexa. Proof of things your parents have done. Things that explain why they've worked so hard to keep you powerless and Emma dependent. He pulled out his phone and showed me photos Emma had secretly taken. Bank statements, emails, legal documents. My hands started shaking as I recognized my own forged signature on papers I'd never seen. She wanted to expose it all today, Jake said, during the reception. But she's terrified, alone, and pregnant. She needs her big sister. Will you help us? The photos on Jake's phone revealed a conspiracy that ran deeper than I ever imagined. Emma had discovered this treasure trove of deception 6 months ago while helping our parents move some boxes from their home office to the attic. One box had split open, spilling years of carefully hidden documents across the floor. What she found inside changed everything she thought she knew about our family. The first revelation was financial. Bank statements showed that my college fund, which my grandparents had set up with equal amounts for both Emma and me, had been systematically drained. Over $50,000 meant for my education had been transferred to accounts in Emma's name. When I'd asked about money for textbooks or housing, my parents had told me the fund was smaller than I thought, that I should be grateful for what I got and take out loans for the rest. Meanwhile, Emma lived in luxury apartments and never worried about money through college. But the theft went beyond education funds. There were forged documents transferring my portion of our grandmother's property investments to Emma. I remembered signing papers when Grandma died, told they were routine estate documents. My signature on those papers was perfect, too perfect. Emma had found the practice sheets where someone had traced my name over and over until they could reproduce it flawlessly. The emails were perhaps the most painful to see. Correspondence between my parents and various family friends, business contacts, and even potential clients for my marketing firm. We're concerned about Alexa's stability, one read. She's always been troubled, prone to making up stories for attention. We'd hate for you to invest in her business only to be disappointed. Another suggested that my lifestyle choices and radical politics made me an unsuitable contact for their conservative friends. They had actively sabotaged my business while smiling to my face and asking why I wasn't more successful. Jake scrolled through more photos, each one another twist of the knife. There were emails to my high school boyfriend's parents, warning them that I was a bad influence on their son. Messages to college professors questioning my mental health. Even correspondence with my first landlord in New York, suggesting they might want to keep an eye on their unstable tenant. Emma threw up when she found these, Jake said quietly. She couldn't believe they'd done all this. But it got worse. The worst was a series of emails from 3 years ago when I'd started having success with my business. My parents had created fake email accounts, posing as dissatisfied customers to leave negative reviews. They'd filed false complaints with the Better Business Bureau that took me months to resolve. They'd even reached out to my biggest client, attempting to poach them for Emma's friend who had just started a competing firm. This is insane, I breathed, scrolling through image after image. This is criminal. Fraud, defamation, theft. Jake nodded grimly. Emma wanted to go to the police immediately, but then she found one more thing that explained why your parents did all this. He took his phone back and pulled up a final set of photos. Your real grandmother's will. I stared at the document, dated just 2 months before my grandmother's stroke. In clear, legal language, it named me as the primary beneficiary of her estate. Not Emma. Not both of us equally. Me. The reason was spelled out in my grandmother's distinctive handwriting. Alexa has shown the strength, intelligence, and independence to handle this responsibility. She will use this gift to build something meaningful while ensuring her sister is cared for but not enabled. Grandmother had seen what I was too close to see. Emma wasn't just the favored child, she was the controlled child. Every gift came with strings, every privilege with conditions. My parents had created a golden cage for Emma while systematically destroying any power base I might have. The will threatened their control over both of us. After your grandmother's stroke, your parents got power of attorney, Jake explained. They changed everything, made themselves the primary beneficiaries with Emma getting the rest. You got a token amount to avoid suspicion. Emma found the original will hidden with all these other documents. I had to sit down on the curb, my legs suddenly unable to hold me. 20 years of gaslighting unraveled in minutes. Every ungrateful daughter accusation, every why can't you be more like your sister comparison, every we've given you everything guilt trip had been calculated manipulation. There's more, Jake said gently, sitting beside me. Emma hired a private investigator without telling your parents. She wanted to understand why they would do all this. The investigator found complications. He showed me a report that revealed my father had been married before. His first wife had died in a car accident when their son was 2 years old. A son neither Emma nor I knew existed. The investigator had tracked down this half-brother, now 32 and living in Chicago. Our parents had been paying him substantial sums for years to stay away, threatening legal action if he tried to contact us. Emma reached out to him last month, Jake continued. His name is Christopher. He has a family, 2 kids. He's been watching you and Emma from afar for years, hoping someday he could know his sisters. Your parents told him you were both severely mentally ill and that contact would be dangerous for everyone. The layers of deception were staggering. Our entire family narrative was built on lies, hidden siblings, stolen inheritances, and systematic psychological warfare. But why? What drove parents to such extremes? The investigator had a theory, Jake said, reading my thoughts. Your father's first wife came from serious money. When she died, that money should have gone to Christopher. But your father had just started dating your mother, who was his secretary at the time. Together, they moved assets, hid accounts, and built their fortune on theft. They've been running scared ever since, terrified that if anyone looked too closely, their whole house of cards would collapse. It all made sense. Keep me powerless so I couldn't investigate. Keep Emma dependent so she wouldn't question. Destroy any outside relationships that might lead to uncomfortable questions. Create a family dynamic so toxic that no one would want to dig deeper. Emma's been in therapy for months trying to process all this, Jake told me. She wanted to confront them immediately, but her therapist helped her see she needed a plan. Today was supposed to be that plan. Use the wedding as a platform to expose everything, with all the family present as witnesses. But she's scared, pregnant, and alone, I finished. Despite my anger at years of silence, I understood. Emma was as much a victim as I was, just in a different way. So what now? Jake stood, offering me his hand. Now we go inside, and we help Emma finish what she started. Your cousin Meredith saved a bridesmaid dress for you. Derek is on his way with his family's lawyer. Your Aunt Linda is already asking questions about discrepancies in the estate. Uncle Carl cornered me an hour ago demanding to know why you weren't there. The family is primed for truth. Emma just needs her big sister to help her tell it. I looked at the wedding venue, elegant and intimidating. Inside were 200 guests, including the parents who had worked so hard to destroy me. Also inside was my sister, pregnant and terrified, finally ready to break free from their control. What exactly did Emma want to do? I asked. Jake smiled for the first time since he'd knocked on my car window. She wanted to wait until your father's toast about perfect families and then take the microphone. She has a speech prepared, and we've loaded all the evidence onto the reception screens. But she kept saying she couldn't do it without you. That you deserved to be there when the truth finally came out. I thought about driving away, about protecting myself from more pain. But then I thought about Emma, 20 years old, and just now finding the courage to stand up to our parents. I thought about Christopher, our brother, watching from the shadows for 30 years. I thought about my grandmother, who saw the truth and tried to protect me even after her stroke left her vulnerable to their manipulations. Okay, I said, standing and smoothing my dress. Let's go crash a wedding. Meredith met us at the side entrance, her face lighting up when she saw me. Thank God you're here, she whispered, pulling me into a fierce hug. Emma's been a wreck. She made Jake check the parking lot every 10 minutes. She produced a garment bag from behind a potted plant. I grabbed this from the bridal suite. It's your bridesmaid dress. Emma ordered it months ago, hoping somehow you'd be here. We ducked into an empty office where I quickly changed. The dress fit perfectly, a soft lavender that Emma knew was my favorite color. Even while planning to expose our parents' crimes, she'd been thinking of small ways to include me. It was so perfectly Emma that tears pricked my eyes. Derek arrived while Meredith was fixing my hair. He kissed me gently, then introduced the woman with him. This is Diane Morrison, my family's attorney. She's reviewed everything Jake sent. Diane was a formidable black woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an air of quiet authority. What your parents have done constitutes fraud, theft, defamation, and conspiracy, she said without preamble. Some charges fall outside the statute of limitations, but not all. More importantly, the evidence Emma gathered gives us leverage for civil suits to recover what was stolen. I don't care about the money, I started, but Diane cut me off with a raised hand. It's not about greed, Alexa. It's about justice and preventing them from doing this to others. They still have access to Emma's accounts. What happens when she tries to protect her child from their influence? What about your brother Christopher's children? Your parents have shown a pattern of using financial manipulation to control family members. That ends today. She was right. This wasn't just about me or even Emma. Our parents had created a generational cycle of abuse that would continue until someone stopped it. Jake pulled up his phone, showing us the reception layout. Your parents are at the head table here. Emma and I are here. The microphone for toasts is at this corner. We've tested the AV system. The evidence will display on all 4 screens when I press this button. Where's Emma now? I asked. Bridal suite, trying not to panic, Jake admitted. Her blood pressure spiked an hour ago. The wedding planner is with her, thinking it's just normal wedding jitters. I need to see her first, I decided, before we do anything else. The journey to the bridal suite felt like walking through a minefield. Every corner could reveal my parents or a family member who'd been told I was too busy to attend. But luck was with us, and we made it without incident. Emma was sitting on a small couch, still in her wedding dress, but with her veil removed. She looked pale, one hand resting protectively on her still flat stomach. When she saw me, her face crumpled. Alexa. She tried to stand but swayed slightly. I rushed to her, catching her in a hug as she sobbed into my shoulder. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I've been such a coward. I let them hurt you for years and I just watched, and I'm so sorry. Shoo, I soothed, holding her tight. We can deal with apologies later. Right now, we need to focus on your health and getting through this. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. Did Jake show you everything? The documents, the theft, Christopher. I nodded. He showed me. Emma, why didn't you come to me when you found out? I was terrified, she admitted. They still pay for my health insurance, my car, our apartment down payment. When I got pregnant, I panicked about losing that support. But then I realized I'd be raising my child in this toxic soup of lies and manipulation. What kind of mother would that make me? A human one, I said gently. You're breaking free now. That's what matters. Derek and Diane entered with Jake and Meredith. Emma straightened, trying to compose herself. Mrs. Morrison, thank you for coming. Call me Diane, the lawyer said warmly. I've reviewed everything. Your documentation is thorough. If you go through with this revelation, things will get ugly. Your parents will likely retaliate. Are you prepared for that? Emma's hand found mine. Not really. But I can't live this lie anymore. And I can't raise my baby thinking this is what family means. We spent the next 30 minutes refining the plan. The original idea had been for Emma to take the microphone during the toast portion. But given her condition and stress levels, we modified it. I would be the one to enter first, drawing the initial shock and anger. Emma would then stand and support me, showing united sisterhood. The evidence would be revealed systematically, with Diane present to handle any legal threats. What about the guests? Meredith asked. Some of these people are your parents' business associates, country club friends. This will be social suicide for them. Good, Emma said with surprising venom. They built their entire social standing on lies and stolen money. Let it burn. Jake pulled up his phone. The reception is starting. Your father is already prepping his toast speech. He's got note cards and everything. What's his topic? I asked, though I could guess. the importance of family loyalty, and how proud he is to have raised such wonderful daughters, Jake said drily. Emphasis on daughter, singular. We did final preparations. Derek would position himself near my parents in case things got physical. Diane would stand by the AV controls with Jake. Meredith would film everything on her phone for legal documentation. Various cousins and sympathetic family members had been quietly alerted to pay attention during the toasts. Emma stood, smoothing her dress. I need to get back out there before someone comes looking. She took my hands, squeezing tight. Alexa, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness yet. But thank you for being here. I couldn't do this without my big sister. The wedding party made their way back to the reception while I waited in the wings. Through the door, I could hear the din of 200 guests enjoying cocktails and appetizers. Soon, the band stopped playing and the wedding coordinator's voice came over the speakers announcing the toast portion of the evening. My father's voice filled the room, confident and commanding as always. Good evening, everyone. As father of the bride, I couldn't be prouder of my daughter Emma and her choice in Jake. Family is everything to Grace and me. We've always believed in loyalty, in supporting each other, in maintaining the bonds that hold us together through any challenge. The irony was thick enough to choke on. Through the crack in the door, I could see him at the microphone, my mother beside him, beaming at the crowd. They looked like the perfect, successful couple, him in his expensive tuxedo, her in a designer gown that cost more than most people's cars. Emma has always embodied our family values, he continued. She's been a devoted daughter, always putting family first, never causing us a moment of worry or disappointment. I saw Jake's hand move to his phone. This was it. Time to shatter their carefully constructed illusion. In our family, we believe in perfection, my father said. In maintaining standards, in preserving our reputation, I pushed open the door and walked into the reception hall. In lying, stealing, and destroying anyone who threatens your control, the silence was immediate and absolute. 200 heads turned to stare at me. My mother's champagne glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. My father's face cycled through emotions: shock, rage, calculation. Security, my mother shrieked. Remove her immediately. But I was already moving toward the microphone, my lavender bridesmaid dress making it clear I was supposed to be there. I'm Alexa Harrison, I announced to the room. The daughter they didn't want you to know exists. The one they banned from my own sister's wedding. Stop this immediately, my father commanded, moving to block me. But Derek was already there, his imposing 6'3" frame creating a barrier. Let her speak, Harold, Derek said calmly. Or would you prefer I share what we've discovered about your first wife's estate? My father went white. Behind him, my mother was frantically gesturing to the wedding coordinator to cut the microphone. But Emma stood up at the head table, her voice clear and strong. No, I invited her, Emma declared. Alexa is my sister, my maid of honor, and she has every right to be here. In fact, we both have something to say. The guests were riveted, social protocols warring with human curiosity. Aunt Linda stood up from her table. I'd like to hear what Alexa has to say. I've been wondering for years why she never comes to family events. Because they're poison, Uncle Carl added, surprising everyone. Harold, Grace, I've kept quiet for too long, but this is wrong. What kind of parents ban their own daughter from her sister's wedding? My parents tried to storm out, but found their path blocked by Derek's parents and siblings, who had strategically positioned themselves during the toast setup. My father's business partners were already pulling out phones, sensing scandal. Emma made her way to the microphone, Jake supporting her. She looked fragile but determined. Mom, Dad, please sit down. If you leave now, you'll miss the truth you've worked so hard to hide, including the news that you're going to be grandparents. That stopped them cold. My mother's face went through a series of calculations before settling on manufactured joy. Emma, darling, you're pregnant? This is wonderful. We should celebrate privately as a family. We are celebrating as a family, Emma cut her off. My whole family. Including my sister Alexa, who you've spent 20 years trying to destroy. And including our brother Christopher, who you've paid to stay away. Gasps rippled through the crowd. My parents stood frozen, trapped between the desire to flee and the need to control the narrative. "What are you talking about?" my father attempted. "Emma, you're confused, hormonal." "I'm not confused," Emma said firmly. "I found the documents, Dad. All of them. The stolen money, the forged signatures, the defamation campaigns. I have proof of everything." Jake pressed a button on his phone. Suddenly, the reception screens lit up with image after image of the evidence Emma had collected. Bank statements, forged documents, defamatory emails, the real will. The guests watched in stunned silence as 20 years of deception unfolded before their eyes. "This is fabricated," my mother cried. "Someone has manipulated our poor Emma." But Diane Morrison stepped forward, her presence commanding attention. "I'm Diane Morrison, attorney at law. I've reviewed all documentation, and I can confirm its authenticity. Mr. and Mrs. Harrison, you have committed multiple felonies including fraud, theft, and conspiracy. I suggest you remain silent until you've secured your own legal representation." The room erupted. Business associates backed away from my parents. Country club friends whispered behind raised hands. Family members demanded explanations. Through it all, Emma kept talking, her voice growing stronger with each word. "They stole Alexa's college fund and gave it to me. They forged her signature to steal her inheritance. They sabotaged her business, ruined her relationships, and banned her from our family because she refused to be controlled. And when she fell in love with a good man who happened to be black, they showed their true colors." She turned to me, tears streaming down her face. "Alexa, I am so sorry. I was a coward. I chose comfort over truth, security over sisterhood. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I promise to spend the rest of my life earning it. Starting today, starting right now, we're done with their lies." The reception hall had transformed from an elegant celebration into a courtroom of public opinion. My parents stood isolated in the center, their carefully maintained facades cracking under the weight of exposure. The screens continued cycling through evidence, each new image drawing gasps and murmurs from the assembled guests. "This is outrageous." My father finally found his voice, attempting to reclaim control. "We're leaving. Anyone who believes this fabricated nonsense can." "Can what, Harold?" Aunt Linda interrupted, standing from her table. "Can expect to be cut off like Alexa was? Can anticipate mysterious problems with their businesses? I've been wondering for years why my investment firm suddenly lost your company's account. Now I know. And why my son was warned away from dating Alexa in high school," Mrs. Chin added from another table. "You told us she was unstable, troubled. We believed you because we trusted you." Uncle Carl stood next, his face flushed with anger. "Where's the missing money from Mother's estate, Harold? The account that supposedly went to administrative fees? I have the statements right here showing withdrawals matching these forged documents." My mother attempted damage control, her voice taking on the wounded tone she'd perfected over years of manipulation. "This is all a misunderstanding. We only wanted what was best for our daughters. If we made mistakes, it was out of love." Love. I finally spoke, my voice cutting through her performance. "You call systematic destruction love? You isolated me, sabotaged my career, stole my inheritance, and tried to destroy my relationship because Derek didn't fit your racist ideals of acceptability." Derek moved to stand beside me, his presence solid and reassuring. His mother, Dr. Patricia Williams, rose from her seat. "Grace, Harold, I've held my tongue out of respect for my son's choices, but no more. The microaggressions, the concerns about cultural differences, the suggestions that your daughter was going through a phase. We see you for exactly what you are." The social pillars my parents had built their lives on were crumbling in real time. Their country club friends edged away, not wanting to be associated with the scandal. Business partners typed furiously on phones, likely consulting lawyers about their associations. Emma swayed slightly, and Jake quickly guided her to a chair. But she refused to stop talking. "There's more," she said, her voice strained but determined. "Mom, Dad, would you like to tell everyone about Christopher? Or should I?" My father's face went ashen. "You don't know what you're talking about." Christopher Morrison, Emma continued, reading from her phone. Born January 15th, 1993. Your son from your first marriage, Dad. The son whose mother died in that car accident, leaving him an inheritance you stole to build your empire with your secretary-turned-second wife. The revelation sent shockwaves through the room. Several of my father's oldest friends looked stunned, clearly unaware he'd been married before. You've been paying him $75,000 a year to stay away from us, Emma revealed. Telling him we were mentally ill, that contact would be dangerous. He has children, Dad. Your grandchildren. Kids who don't know they have aunts because you prioritized your lies over family. Jake pulled up a video on his phone, projecting it onto the screens. A man appeared, clearly related to us with the same blue eyes and strong jawline. My name is Christopher Morrison, the recorded voice said. Harold Harrison is my father. He's paid me for 15 years to stay away from my sisters, threatening legal action if I tried to contact them. When Emma reached out last month, I thought it was a trap. I've watched from afar as he destroyed Alexa and controlled Emma. I'm done being silent. The video continued with Christopher showing his own documentation, contracts my father had forced him to sign, threatening emails, records of payments. The final nail in my parents' coffin of respectability. Enough. My father roared, his controlled demeanor finally cracking completely. You ungrateful brats. After everything we've done for you. Everything you've done to us, I corrected. And it ends today. My mother turned on Emma with vicious intensity. You little fool. You think you can survive without us? That apartment you live in? The car you drive? Your health insurance? Your entire life depends on our generosity. Actually, Jake interjected calmly, it doesn't. Emma's been on my insurance since we got engaged. The apartment is in my name. And thanks to Diane's quick work, we've already frozen the accounts your names are on to prevent you from draining them in retaliation. Diane nodded, adding, we've also filed injunctions preventing you from accessing any of Emma's trust funds or assets. Given the evidence of previous theft and fraud, no judge will side with you. The tag team of Emma's newfound support system was beautiful to watch. My sister had spent years as isolated as I was, just in a golden cage instead of exile. Now she had Jake, Diane, and if she'd accept it, me. You've destroyed us, my mother hissed, her perfect makeup running with angry tears. Our reputation, our standing, everything we've built. Everything you built on lies and theft, Derek's father, Judge Williams, interjected. He'd been silent until now, but his deep voice commanded immediate attention. I've seen enough evidence here to warrant criminal investigation. If I were you, I'd spend less time on threats and more time on finding excellent legal representation. The wedding photographer had been discreetly documenting everything, likely sensing this would be the most talked-about event he'd ever shot. Meredith continued filming on her phone, creating an indisputable record. Several guests were live streaming, the scandal already spreading beyond this room. My father made one last desperate play. Emma, sweetheart, think of your child. Do you want your baby growing up in scandal? We can work this out privately, quietly. For the sake of the family. Emma's hand went to her stomach, and for a moment, I feared she might waver. But then she looked at me, and I saw steel in her eyes that had never been there before. I am thinking of my child, she said firmly. I'm thinking about the toxic legacy of lies and manipulation that stops with me. I won't raise my baby in a family where love is conditional, where truth is negotiable, where one child is destroyed to control another. She stood, Jake studying her. Mom, Dad, you're no longer welcome in our lives. Not until you've gotten extensive therapy and made real amends for what you've done. And maybe not even then. You can't do this, my mother screamed, lunging forward. Derek and his brothers smoothly intercepted, creating a protective barrier. It's already done, I said quietly. You've lost. Your money, your reputation, your control over us, it's all gone. And you did it to yourselves. Security finally arrived, summoned by the venue coordinator who'd wisely realized the situation required professional intervention. As my parents were escorted out, still threatening lawsuits and retribution, the room remained in stunned silence. Then Aunt Linda started clapping. Slowly, uncertainly at first, then with growing conviction. Uncle Carl joined her, then Meredith, then Derek's family. Soon, most of the room was applauding the courage it had taken to expose such deep-rooted corruption. Emma collapsed back into her chair, the adrenaline finally wearing off. "Is it over?" she asked weakly. "The hard part is," Jake assured her, checking her pulse with professional concern. "Now comes the healing." I knelt beside my sister's chair, taking her hands. "Emma, what you just did, that was incredibly brave." "I had my big sister with me," she said simply. "I couldn't have done it alone." "Alexa, can you ever forgive me? For all the years of silence, for benefiting from their favoritism, for being too weak to stand up for you." I thought about the years of pain, the isolation, the gaslighting that had made me question my own worth. But I also thought about the Emma I'd just witnessed, fierce, protective, finally free from our parents' manipulation. "Forgiveness is a process," I said honestly. "But we can start today. We can build something real between us, something that's ours without their poison." Emma squeezed my hands tight. "I want my child to know their Aunt Alexa, to grow up seeing what real strength looks like. Will you help me learn how to be that strong?" Before I could answer, the wedding coordinator tentatively approached. Should we continue with the reception? There's still dinner, dancing." Jake looked around the room at the shell-shocked but oddly exhilarated guests. "You know what? Yes, let's continue. This is still our wedding day. We're celebrating love, truth, and new beginnings. Anyone who wants to stay is welcome." The band, who'd been frozen in shock through the entire confrontation, slowly began playing again. It was surreal, but somehow perfect. The wedding continued without my parents, lighter and more genuine for their absence. As the reception resumed with an almost manic energy of relief and release, more truths emerged from the wreckage of my parents' deception. Family members who'd been silent for years found their voices, approaching Emma and me with their own stories and suspicions finally confirmed. Derek's Aunt Marilyn, a forensic accountant, had cornered Diane Morrison and was going through the financial documents with professional interest. "This is sophisticated fraud," I overheard her saying. "The money laundering alone could trigger federal investigation." "Good," Diane replied. "The more agencies involved, the less likely Harold and Grace can buy their way out of consequences." Grandmother's lawyer, Mr. Fitzgerald, had arrived after receiving an urgent call from Uncle Carl. The elderly man looked devastated as he reviewed the evidence of the will tampering. "I always wondered why Mrs. Harrison seemed so distressed after her stroke," he said quietly. "She kept trying to write something, but your parents insisted it was just confusion from the brain damage." She was trying to warn us, I realized, my heart breaking for my grandmother who'd spent her final years knowing her wishes had been subverted, but unable to communicate it. Emma, despite Jake and everyone else's urging to rest, insisted on staying for these revelations. She'd moved to a comfortable chair where she could elevate her feet, but her eyes were sharp and focused as each new piece of the puzzle fell into place. "There's something else," she said suddenly, gesturing for Jake to bring her purse. She pulled out a small leather journal. "I found this in Mom's dresser. I think you need to see it, Alexa." The journal documented my mother's systematic campaign against me, written in her own hand. The entries went back to when I was 8 years old and had won a national spelling bee. "Alexa's too smart for her own good," one entry read. "Harold's mother already favors her. We need to be careful or Emma will be overlooked. Must find ways to humble Alexa without seeming cruel." The calculations were chilling. Every punishment, every withheld privilege, every public humiliation had been carefully planned to break my spirit while maintaining their image as loving parents. There were notes about redirecting my achievements to Emma, strategies for isolating me from extended family, even plans to encourage eating disorders by constantly criticizing my appearance during vulnerable teenage years. "This is sick," Derek said, reading over my shoulder. "This is psychological warfare against a child." But the most shocking revelation came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Wellington, my mother's best friend from the country club, had been steadily drinking champagne through the entire drama. Finally, she stood unsteadily and declared, "I can't keep this secret anymore." The room turned to her as she wobbled toward us. Grace didn't just steal from Christopher's inheritance. She was the one driving the car that killed his mother. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the band stopped playing. "It was ruled an accident, Mrs. Wellington continued, words slurring slightly. "But Grace told me the truth during a wine night years ago. She'd been having an affair with Harold while working as his secretary. His wife found out, confronted her in the parking garage. Grace claimed it was self-defense, that Mrs. Harrison attacked her first. But she deliberately hit her with the car. Then Harold used his money to make it all go away." Emma's face had gone white. Jake immediately checked her blood pressure while Diane Morrison took out her phone to record Mrs. Wellington's confession. "She said they had to get married quickly after that," Mrs. Wellington continued, "to claim spousal privilege if anyone investigated. The money from the first wife's estate was just a bonus. Grace always said it was cosmic justice, that if Harold's first wife hadn't been so cold, he never would have strayed." The revelation recontextualized everything. My parents weren't just thieves and manipulators. They were potentially murderers who'd built their entire lives on blood money. "Christopher needs to know," I said numbly. "He deserves the truth about his mother's death." Emma was already texting him, her fingers shaking. Within minutes, her phone rang. She put it on speaker with trembling hands. "Is it true?" Christopher's voice was rough with emotion. "Did they kill my mother?" "We don't know for certain," Diane interjected carefully. "But we have a witness statement that warrants investigation." "Christopher, I know this is overwhelming, but we need to coordinate. Can you come to New York?" "I'm already on my way," he said. "I left Chicago the moment Emma told me about the wedding confrontation. I'll be there by morning." As the call ended, Judge Williams approached our group. "I've contacted a colleague in the district attorney's office. With Mrs. Wellington's testimony and the financial evidence, they'll open a formal investigation. Your parents will likely be arrested within 48 hours. The weight of it all was staggering. In a single evening, we'd gone from exposing financial fraud to potentially uncovering murder. My parents had fled thinking they faced social ruin and civil lawsuits. They had no idea criminal charges were now on the table. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jake addressed the room, his voice carrying over the murmurs. "We understand this has been an unprecedented evening. We're grateful to those of you who've come forward with information. If anyone else has knowledge of Harold and Grace Harrison's activities that might be relevant to the investigations, please speak with Ms. Morrison." A line quickly formed. Business associates with suspicious contracts, family friends who'd been threatened or paid for silence, even the pastor who'd been blackmailed into keeping quiet about financial irregularities in the church fund my parents managed. Through it all, Emma held my hand like a lifeline. "How did we survive them?" she whispered. "How did we come out of that house with any humanity intact?" "We had each other," I realized. Even when they tried to turn us against each other, some part of us remembered being sisters. That's what they could never fully destroy. The reception continued in surreal fashion. The wedding cake was cut, toasts were made to the couple's courage and new beginnings, and people danced with an almost desperate need to celebrate life and truth in the face of such darkness. Derek and I slow danced while keeping an eye on Emma, who'd finally been convinced to rest in the bridal suite with a nurse in attendance. "Your family knows how to throw a memorable party," Derek said drily, spinning me gently. "This isn't my family," I corrected, then reconsidered. Or maybe it is now. The real family. The ones who stayed, who stood up, who chose truth over comfortable lies. Meredith had taken over as unofficial coordinator of information, her phone constantly buzzing with messages from family members who'd left early but wanted to offer support or information. "Cousin Jeffrey says he has records of Uncle Harold threatening him over a business deal," she reported. "And Aunt Susan thinks they might have done something to her mother's will too." The scope kept expanding. My parents hadn't just targeted Emma and me. They'd been running cons and manipulations on the entire extended family for decades, using their position and respectability as cover. We need to warn them, I said suddenly. Mom and Dad don't know about Mrs. Wellington's confession. They think they're just facing financial crimes. If they realize murder charges are possible. Diane was already on it. I've notified the authorities. There's already a watch on their accounts and passports. They won't get far. But I knew my parents. They'd survived this long by being 3 steps ahead of everyone else. Somewhere out there, they were probably already implementing an escape plan they'd had in place for years. Let them run, Emma said when I expressed my concerns. She'd returned from her rest, looking pale but determined. They can't run from what they've done. The truth is out now. Their power came from secrets, and those are all gone. She was right. Whatever happened with criminal charges, my parents had already lost what mattered most to them: their reputation, their control, their carefully constructed false reality. They were exposed, and there was no coming back from that. The wedding finally wound down near midnight. Guests departed with hugs and promises of support. The family members who'd come forward with information exchanged contact details with Diane. Plans were made for a coordinated approach to recovering stolen assets and pursuing justice. As we stood in the empty reception hall, surveying the aftermath of the most dramatic wedding in family history, Jake raised a glass of sparkling cider. To new beginnings, he toasted. To truth, to courage, and to the family we choose. To the family we choose, we echoed, and I felt the words settle into my bones like a promise. The immediate aftermath of the wedding was a whirlwind of legal procedures and family revelations. Within 36 hours, my parents were arrested at a private airfield attempting to board a chartered plane to a non-extradition country. The FBI had frozen their accounts based on the money laundering evidence, and the murder investigation into Christopher's mother's death had been officially opened. Emma and Jake postponed their honeymoon to deal with the chaos. Despite everyone's protests, Emma insisted on being present for every legal meeting, determined to see justice through to the end. Her pregnancy was carefully monitored, but somehow the truth-telling had stabilized her blood pressure better than any medication. 3 days after the wedding, Christopher arrived at our hastily arranged family meeting. Seeing him in person was surreal. He had our father's height and our shared blue eyes, but his expression held a warmth that had been systematically trained out of our immediate family. "I've imagined meeting you both for so long," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I used to park outside your schools sometimes, just to catch a glimpse." "I'm sorry if that sounds creepy. I just wanted to know my sisters." "It's not creepy," Emma assured him, tears flowing freely. "It's heartbreaking. You should have been with us all along." We spent hours sharing stories, filling in the gaps of 3 decades of separation. Christopher was a teacher, married to a wonderful woman named Maria, with 2 children who were our nieces we'd never known existed. He showed us pictures: 6-year-old Sophia, who had Emma's nose, and 4-year-old Gabriel, who looked startlingly like childhood photos of me. "I've told them about their aunts," Christopher said quietly. "Carefully, age-appropriately. They know they have family who loves them but couldn't visit because of complicated grown-up problems. They're excited to meet you when you're ready." 3 months later, the legal proceedings were in full swing. My parents had hired the best defense attorneys money could buy, but the evidence was overwhelming. Mrs. Wellington, sobered up and supported by her own therapist, had given a detailed deposition about Grace's confession. Other witnesses had come forward with pieces of the puzzle that painted a damning picture of decades of criminal behavior. Emma gave birth to Alexandra during the trial preparations. The timing was terrible but also perfect. New life entering the world just as we were closing the chapter on the toxic legacy of our parents. Jake was an incredible father, and watching Emma blossom into motherhood without our parents' poisonous influence was beautiful. "She'll never know them," Emma said one night as she nursed Alexandra. "Is that wrong? To keep grandparents from their grandchild?" "They're not grandparents," I reminded her. "They're criminals who happened to birth us. Alexandra has plenty of real family who actually love her." And she did. Derek's parents had embraced their role as surrogate grandparents. Aunt Linda visited weekly with homemade casseroles and baby clothes. Christopher and his family had moved to New York to be closer to us. Even our grandmother's sister, 93-year-old Aunt Rose, had emerged from retirement home obscurity to dote on the baby. I always knew something was wrong, Aunt Rose told us during one visit. Your grandmother tried to tell me before her stroke. She was worried about you girls. I should have pushed harder, investigated more. You couldn't have known, I assured her. They fooled everyone. No, she said firmly. I chose comfortable blindness over uncomfortable truth. Too many of us did. That's how they got away with it for so long. The trial itself was a media circus. The story of prominent society couples' fall from grace, complete with murder allegations and family fraud, was irresistible to the press. We hired security and stayed away from court except when testifying was required. My testimony day was the hardest. Sitting in that witness box, detailing years of abuse while my parents sat at the defense table, was like reliving every painful moment. But I wasn't alone. Derek sat in the gallery, his presence a constant reminder of the love I'd found despite their attempts to isolate me. Emma was there too, Alexandra sleeping in her arms, showing me the future we were building free from their influence. They stole my childhood, my inheritance, my sense of self, I testified. But they couldn't steal my ability to love, to trust, to build something better. That's their real failure. Despite everything, they couldn't break us. My father was convicted on multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. The murder charge related to Christopher's mother was harder to prove after 30 years, but he was found guilty of conspiracy to cover up a crime and tampering with evidence. He received 25 years in federal prison. My mother's trial was more complex. Mrs. Wellington's testimony about the confession was compelling, but without physical evidence, the murder charge resulted in a hung jury. However, she was convicted on fraud, conspiracy, and theft charges, receiving 15 years. The day of their sentencing, they finally showed their true faces. Gone were the polished society couple. In their place stood two bitter, angry people who still refused to accept responsibility. You destroyed our lives, my mother spat at Emma and me. Ungrateful children who bit the hands that fed them. We destroyed the lies, Emma replied calmly. What's left is just who you really are. As they were led away in handcuffs, I felt empty. Not sad, not happy, just empty. The parents I'd spent my life trying to please had never really existed. These criminals in orange jumpsuits were strangers who happened to share our DNA. 1 year later, life had settled into a new kind of normal. The legal battles continued as we worked to recover stolen assets and compensate other victims of our parents' schemes. But daily life had found rhythm and peace. Derek and I married in a small ceremony with our chosen family. Emma was my matron of honor, Christopher was Derek's groomsman, and Alexandra toddled down the aisle throwing flower petals with enthusiastic inaccuracy. It was everything my parents would have hated and everything I'd ever wanted, genuine, diverse, and full of real love. My business, freed from their sabotage, had exploded with success. I'd written a book about surviving family abuse that became a bestseller. Emma started a nonprofit supporting adult children of toxic parents, using her story to help others find freedom. Christopher integrated into our lives seamlessly, as if he'd always been there. His children called us Aunt Lexa and Aunt Em, and Sunday dinners at rotating houses became sacred tradition. We were building the family we should have had all along. Do you ever think about them? Emma asked one evening as we watched our children play together in her backyard. Alexandra was showing her cousins Sophia and Gabriel her sandbox, while Jake and Derek discussed renovating the garage into a playroom. Sometimes I admitted, not with longing or even anger anymore. More like how you'd think about a natural disaster you survived. It shaped you, but it doesn't define you. Emma nodded, understanding perfectly. I got a letter from Mom last week. From prison. I tensed. We'd agreed not to read any correspondence from them, to maintain no contact for our mental health. I didn't open it, she assured me quickly. Gave it straight to Diane for the file. But it made me realize something. They're still trying to control the narrative, even from prison. Still trying to be the center of our story. But they're not, I said firmly. This is our story now. Alexandra's story. Christopher's story. The story of breaking cycles and choosing love over control. To choosing love, Emma echoed, raising her glass of wine in a toast. To choosing love, I agreed, clinking my glass against hers. The sun set over the yard where our children played, their laughter mixing with the evening birdsong. Inside, our chosen family prepared dinner together, Derek and Jake arguing good-naturedly about seasoning while Christopher set the table. This was what family looked like, imperfect, chosen, real. My parents had taught me many things through their negative example. They taught me that love shouldn't come with conditions, that family isn't about blood but about choice, that truth is more valuable than any inheritance. Most importantly, they taught me that sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is the freedom to write your own story. Looking back at that terrified 28-year-old sitting in her car outside her sister's wedding, I wish I could tell her it would all be worth it. The pain, the revelations, the complete destruction of everything she thought she knew about her family would lead to something beautiful. Not perfect, but real. Not easy, but worthwhile. Sometimes the greatest gift is the truth that sets you free. Even when that truth is painful, even when it costs everything you thought you had, even when it reveals that the love you sought was never there to find. Because on the other side of that truth is the chance to build something genuine, to find people who love you without conditions, to create a family bound by choice rather than manipulation. Our story didn't end with justice, though justice helped. It didn't end with revenge, though accountability mattered. It ended with healing, with forgiveness of ourselves, not them, and with the radical act of choosing joy despite trauma. It ended with the understanding that we survived not because we were strong, but because we finally learned we deserved to be free. And in that freedom, we found everything they tried to deny us: love, success, genuine connection, and the unshakable knowledge that we were worthy of it all. That's the real inheritance my parents never meant to give us. The knowledge that we could build beautiful lives on the ashes of their lies. And we did. Oh, how we did. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to stand up to toxic family members? How did you find the courage to speak your truth? Share your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. These stories of survival and triumph need to be heard. Share this video with anyone who needs to know they're not alone in dealing with difficult family situations. Thank you for listening, and remember, choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. You deserve love without conditions, family without manipulation, and a life built on truth. Until next time, keep choosing freedom.